Mehr ist nix. New York Times, ja? Wall Street Journal, New York Times?
Nein, nicht New York Times. Quatsch, Reuters.
Nein, Declan hatte das in der New York Times.
Ach ja.
Die erste große Story, die er hatte über Matchfixing, hatte
ja.
die Times dann abgedruckt. Columbia Fellow?
Columbia Journalism School. Und hier und da. Brüssel, Madrid, Washington und...
All over the place.
All over the place.
As a reporter, right?
And editing. Super. Also ich habe die...
Das ist am Start, alles klar. Haben wir noch eine Minute. Juliane, es ist so, wenn wir dann, if we should get to the end of our road 10 minutes early, so be it. Wir müssen das ja nicht totreiten, wenn es sich anbietet.
Is what? Okay. Okay. Yeah, very punctual.
Give us a minute.
So punctual.
Okay, good. Hello everybody, welcome to the session. We're talking not about Facebook, we're not talking about user engagement, we're talking about people doing real things in real life more. This is about journalists going to schools, which we think we should, instead of just talking amongst ourselves so much as we do. And I want to introduce the speaker here, Juliane von Reppert-Bismarck. She's a German, married to an Englishman, living in Belgium. She has been a working journalist, worked with Reuters as a correspondent, with the Wall Street Journal, with MLAX, reporting from all kinds of places. And now she has a different hat on, and she will get to that, and I should, for transparency's sake, mention I'm a member of a board. So basically, I'm party to this. I'm not the detached, disinterested third person here, but I will try to be as fair as possible. And I give the floor to her in a second, and then we will open it up rather soon, and you can ask questions, and then see how far we get along. So, Juliane, here you go.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. So as Willie said, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing in this new project. And then we'll maybe have a little discussion, and I really hope that we can have a really great discussion about what we can do to improve the level of news literacy among specifically young people here in Europe, which is actually our remit of Lie Detectors. Oh, really? You want me to talk? Oh, God, it's so scary. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. So I have this brand new PowerPoint presentation. I have to tell you, I have so recently left journalism that I'm still not very comfortable with PowerPoint. So, but let's hope it works, okay? So, let's see. Oh, yes, wow, there we go. So, I'm a journalist who about 18 months ago decided, oh my God, after Brexit and Trump, what are we doing beautiful journalism if people can't actually tell the difference between what's beautiful journalism and what's complete and utter fiction and all the things in between. So I founded something called Lie Detectors, and you see there our funders and a few of the organizations that we're partnered with. You see that we're a member of the high-level group on fake news at the European Commission level, which has got the remit of advising the European Union on what to do sort of in long-term solutions for disinformation. And what we do is we basically train journalists, we select journalists, we train them, and we send them into into classrooms to talk to children aged 10 to 15 about fake news and also about media bias. And I'll tell you why we've got this approach and why I decided to do this, because actually the first thing was I thought this must exist and I'm going to write about it if it exists. And then it turned out it didn't exist, so I thought, oh damn, I better start it myself. And what our thinking is quite pessimistic. Our thinking is along kind of the worst case scenario lines. And we think it can't really all, disinformation and the solution to disinformation can't just be left to the tech platforms. And it can't all be left to the debunking initiatives, important though they are. And so our worst case scenario is, what if a lot of the disinformation that we've been talking about during this conference a lot, what if a lot of it actually cannot be caught quite as easily by the clever algorithms and by the clever initiatives? And what if the fact-checking sites that do exist and do catch the disinformation, if they don't have enough reach, or even worse, if those people who do read a fact-checking site don't necessarily believe what they're reading there? And what if this is not only a problem when there's a big WikiLeaks problem, or here the Italian elections, everybody was on the lookout for it. Crosscheck was doing some amazing work ahead of the French elections. What if the problem is not only this peak that happens during election campaigns, but what if there's actually this very slow drip of disinformation that distorts views and creates world views that then, in a very subtle, low-profile way, change the way people see the world and the way people then interact. And what if this is, and I'm almost ready with this hypothesis, and then I'll go on to what we actually do. What if this is actually reaching people who are much younger than we thought? And I'm talking about children. And what if the parents and the teachers are either completely unaware that they are being targeted and they're consuming this stuff, or even if they are aware, they just don't have the words to deal with it. So that sounds really pessimistic, but it's actually quite true to some extent. And so in the course of our work, when we work with children, I'm going to tell you an example of something that is circulating. So hold on. There's lots of examples. We come across a lot of examples of what these kids are getting because we're actually asking these questions. And I want to show you one example as a really good reminder of why this is actually a really difficult thing to tackle, and then hopefully we'll get into discussion of how it can be done. So I was talking some time ago, about a year ago, with a very bright teenager from Germany, from a very liberal background, very good, nice city, everything was fine. And I was talking to her, I was checking in with her, because during the Trump-Clinton campaign, her classroom in this very liberal town had been split down the middle between, and these are 13-year-olds we're talking about, between supporting Hillary or supporting Trump. And when I had dug into this, we had found all the things that the Mueller investigation has now been turning up, which is Russian bots circulating, complete fabrications via Instagram, and all that. Anyway, so I was checking in with her. There were no elections going on or anything. I said, how's it going? And it turned out that even though her whole class had by now decided that Trump was a bad thing, they were still receiving the kind of messages on Snapchat, on WhatsApp, on Instagram, that were kind of continuing that sort of narrative. And I'll show you, because she said to me, I've been thinking about the Syrian refugees, and I feel very sorry for them, but they really do have to take responsibility for their actions and for their very bad reputation. And I said, gosh, that's an interesting comment to make. What makes you say that? So she forwarded me the story that had been circulating. So this is like, I'm not going to go through the whole story, but this is a story that was circulated by Breitbart in January 2017, and that refers to New Year's Eve in a town in Germany called Dortmund, which nobody's really heard of. I mean, you will, but not that many people. It's just a small town, who cares? And it says that a group of Syrian refugees took a hold, seized the city during the New Year's Eve celebrations, and set fire to Germany's oldest church. Then went on to attack a bunch of homeless people, and then stood around in a huge mob shouting jihadi slogans and unfurling flags of ISIS-related groups. And the thing is that none of that was true. There was a slight fire at a church. It was not the oldest church in Germany. There were some injuries sustained by some homeless people by fireworks, and there was a group of Syrian refugees that in fact had been chanting Allahu Akbar around midnight. But the thing is, the fire was set by someone else. The homeless people had been targeted by, they hadn't been targeted, they'd been hit by somebody setting off a firework by mistake. And the refugees had indeed been gathering, but what they'd been doing, and they'd been praising God because of the ceasefire in Aleppo, not because they were warmongering. But this is incredibly difficult to disprove. And so when the German journalist who actually, and this is going to ring true for those of you who are journalists in this room, the journalist who wrote the original story on which Breitbart based their report, then tried to correct this, and he got something very friendly in return. There's his tweet saying, actually, they were just celebrating the ceasefire, and he got a friendly little death threat right afterwards. And more death threats coming, and more threats, and more threats, and more attacks via social media. I actually spoke to him. So the thing is, the problem with this story is that it was incredibly difficult to disprove, and Breitbart itself refuses to this day to say that it is an incorrect story because it's a very clever splicing of fact and fake. And if it's that difficult for us adults to decipher, then how on earth are children going to be able to do this? So, and months later, as you can tell, this child, this 13-year-old, is still telling me that in actual fact, Syrians really behave quite badly, and it's their own fault if we don't like them. And if, and Merkel was probably wrong to let them all in the first place, right? If you've been following the whole German thing, that's, it's been a huge debate. Anyway, so, and this is a big problem. Like the UK communications watchdog Ofcom says that children are online and consuming information for about 15 hours a week, and that's a very conservative estimate. And the EU barometer from a while ago said that 52% of respondents to a big survey said they distrust the media, and as we know, that's enough to win you an election, going either way. So here's me doing a session. I'm going to now tell you a little bit of what we do, right? So when I've told you the problem, so what we do is we send working journalists into schools, and they give 90-minute sessions to kids, and they talk about two things. On the first hand, they speak about fake news, disinformation. We get them to vote. We get the kids to decide whether a story is real or not. We've got an awful lot of feedback. There's some here, but I'll tell you the things that I think are the most important ones that we've now seen on the basis of about 420 kids responding and giving us feedback and everything. And that is that no classroom is immune to this. Even the ones that have had media literacy education before still fall for the lies. 14 and 15-year-olds are actively sharing stuff. They're getting into fights on an almost daily basis about things. They're using their emoticons more and more. This kind of speeds up an awful lot between them. It's not just a problem for poorer, underprivileged kids. This is also an issue for children from very privileged ranks of society, where we've also tested those kind of classrooms. The good thing about it is that kids actually have an innate ability to recognize this stuff. So what we do is we try not to come with and I really want to know, if there's any practitioners out here, I'd love to hear about how you do it, but we decided, let's not come with our own words. Let's not come into the classroom and go, this is manipulation and propaganda, and it's called fake news or disinformation or all of these things. And instead, we invite the kids to come with their own words. What do you call this? What is it? And they come with really interesting words. So you find that when you ask, what is it? They'll come with very surprising words like, oh, it's revenge, or it's money-making. And in fact, a lot of the kids understand very well that this is an issue about making money, because they're all on YouTube, right? So they get it. They all want to be YouTubers these days. They don't want to be footballers or models anymore, or superstars. They want to be on YouTube. And on the other hand, they also really understand this idea of manipulating people's perceptions via their screen, because this is what they do every day on their digital playground. They decide what kind of photo are they going to send of themselves, of their friend, of their frenemy, every single day. So they have this innate understanding that's probably much more sophisticated than ours, which they use every day to navigate their little world. I'm sorry, I don't mean that in any disparaging way. They just haven't directed that view into the adult world of news. And once they do, they understand it really well, which is incredibly rewarding and really like a very positive thing. So the bad news about the teachers is that they're mainly enormously unprepared for this. They often come up to us afterwards and say, oh my God, why are my 11-year-old children all on Facebook? Or they're not allowed to. What does clickbait mean? You know, and why do they know all of this? I thought the IT teacher had already taught them all of this. And the good thing is that the teachers, once we've been in, actually all want more information. And what we then do is we lead them on to media literacy projects that are out there. And the other thing that we talk about, which I think is at least as important and takes up half of our sessions, is that, and this is why we employ journalists and not just teachers or consultants or trainers or whatever, we send journalists into the classroom so that the journalists can talk to them and fess up to media bias in the professional media. Because this is a real problem that a lot of journalists don't often get the chance to admit, or perhaps don't necessarily want to admit. But it is true that in big and small ways, even the professional press, even by the way it chooses its stories, you've all had to do news judgment, right? We're getting better and better at targeting our audiences. We know what's a clickable headline. Our publishers certainly know, and we also are more and more squeezed in our business models, and therefore have to, just from an economic point of view, somehow make sure we keep our audiences and give them what they want to already hear. So if you look at it, and I don't know, and I'd love to hear from you, whether any kind of real study has been done about the move, but certainly in the UK, I would say that a lot of the press has been moving into much more polarized positions, and that's something that we feel that the kids really need to understand. I'm going to show you something that looks quite scary. Somebody's actually mapped media bias. There's a patent lawyer in the US called Vanessa Otero, who's actually mapped it. This is incredibly complicated, so don't worry, you're not going to be able to read it. So this describes the US media, and the US media is supposedly very, very strict, neutral, along a left to right axis, political axis, right? Liberal to conservative. And if you can't read it, believe me, it's just as difficult to read when you're actually sitting right in front of it. But we try, so we go from this thing like, okay, here's the reality, and we want children to know this because we believe that only when children understand that even the professional, bona fide press makes mistakes, has a particular bias perhaps, has a particular focus, they understand that that happens, can they then understand it enough to tell it apart from the outright lies and become immune a little to the sort of attacks of the, what Trump likes to call the fake news media. So we've created these interactive games for the children to really internalize physically how easy it is, and we do this for the two age groups that we target, how easy it is for to tell a story that's one-sided or incomplete. And we really do think that actually being able to tell the difference between the lies and the bias reporting, that's one of the most important things. The effect of all of this is really electrifying. It's 90 minutes, and the kids love it. I'm going to show you some testimonials. The kids love it. They get it that this is a real adult issue, and somebody's bothered to come into the classroom and talk to them about it, a real live journalist, also closing this gap between citizens and journalists, which can do so much damage. The teachers really like it. This one, the lower one, is one of my favorite quotes. This is quite a radically left-leaning teacher, very progressive, really great guy, but clearly on the left side of the spectrum. And just to show that we're actually trying to be unpolitical, we're not, we're actually just trying to bring people back into the messy center where reality actually happens. And he said, you can read it, I'm now reading a much more balanced kind of variety of news. And I really love that he said that. And this is also, somebody asked me yesterday about what's the impact, how do you measure the impact of what you do? And this is one of the ones where we were approached after a session by the head teacher of a school who said, Oh God, this is amazing. It makes so much sense. We're going to add a point to our mission statement online, which I think is really lovely. And obviously the journalists totally love it because, as you all know, journalists love to talk about themselves. They love to have an audience. And they really, it's a really wonderful feeling, you know, and the kids afterwards sometimes come up and go, oh, can I have your autograph or something? You're like, believe me, you don't want my autograph. So I think that's it, really. Right now, what we're doing is, so the journalists are really our lifeblood, right? So right now, what we're doing, we're scaling it, we're training more teachers, we're sending them out to more schools. The idea is we're now based in Belgium and in Germany, and the idea is to really scale that within those two countries, but to go into a third country before the end of the year. We're fully funded for 3 years, and the idea is to really have the kind of script that's very easily translatable. You can just translate it from one language to another and just go, put it into classrooms in Italy, in the Netherlands, in Austria, wherever it might be. We've tested it on these two countries, and it's worked. So, and what we're also working on a more sort of advocacy level is to really try and get media literacy and news literacy to become part of teacher training colleges, because it's the teachers that carry this and that have to buy into it for it to have an effect. And of course, with the 90 minutes that we have when we go in, we can't reach a lot. We can't actually do everything. We can't answer all of their questions, right? But what we can do is we can plant little question marks into all of their heads, the heads of the children and the heads of the teachers. And once those question marks are in there, then all sorts of amazing and brilliant things can happen. And that's all from me about lie detectors for now.
I will open the floor in a second. Just have two questions. First off, how you choose the tools, how you choose the journalists?
Okay.
Can anybody do it?
Oh, good question. So I'm bracing for the day when a Breitbart journalist wants to take our course. But we actually have it in our statement, in our business plan, that we reserve the right to choose the journalists. So we choose journalists who either from a very reputable news organization or we know them from journalism school circles that are very, with a very high level. We really try and take journalists who are good. Right, we have at the moment we've got ARD and a former Spiegel person going into Leipzig, because we're also trying to. Did you say what countries did we choose? No. Was that your question? What was your
question? Was how you choose the journalists?
How do you choose?
Can anybody do it?
Can anyone? Well, I mean, it's incredibly easy. You do it it's a 4-hour workshop, and then afterwards you have to basically sign up to our code of ethics, which says, I'll go into classrooms and I promise I'll not be political. I won't go on some sort of crazed political rave, and I will actually use the script, because the script, by the way, is incredibly important, and we've developed it with the feedback of hundreds of children and lots of teachers and educational psychologists, because when you're talking about this kind of stuff, you can also really get it wrong. There's like a lot of things like kids' attention spans, and I didn't know this at all when I started, right? There's been a massive learning curve for me. But how do you speak to kids about this? How do you keep their attention? And how do you make sure when you're talking to them about fake stuff that they don't actually come away thinking, oh, that was real? Like the guy really did marry the snake or something, because they actually weren't paying attention. They were like scribbling little doodles. So we work a lot with like seating the kids and doing like physical stuff so that they remember it in the correct way.
I mean, just to give one example about bias, one very simple thing is half of the class stays inside and has to say, what do I see inside the room? The other part of the class goes outside and say, what does the school look like? And then they realize, this is a point of view. I didn't get the whole picture being in a room. I didn't get the whole picture looking at the outside. So very simple things. Yeah. And the snake example, Juliane just mentioned in passing, I really love that snake example. There's a fake news, Indian guy marries a snake. Is it true or not? Of course, all grown-ups would say it's not true. But then you should see the children discuss it. Could it be true? If the snake is nice, why shouldn't he marry her then? And then another says, no, you can't marry snakes. And then you have the kids discussing on their own terms. So what you mentioned in the beginning, we don't bring this huge terminology. There's a lot of academic research and a lot of complicated words for children. And we don't come with this whole apparatus and put it on them, but we let them discuss in their own words how they see it. And then it is sometimes very amazing, because as a grown-up and as a journalist, you feel, yeah, you've seen it all, as we know. And then the kids have a completely fresh point of view on the most amazing things. And then they discuss it in class, and it's and also what you said, like, you can't underestimate it. It is not an issue of poor people or rich people. We have very similar issues, irrespective of where the school is. In rich areas or in poor areas, I would say 80–90% of the questions are the same. It's not a social stratification issue so much.
Yeah. What I also find really interesting is so you have to really learn to live with the silence in the classroom. And this is also what we teach the journalists about, like, let the question sink. And when we're doing the vote, like, we show them a bunch of stories. They have to be age relevant, obviously. And we get them to vote. And you see, and this is just like little ecosystems and silos online. You see one kid raising his hand because he thinks that the story is true. And then the one sitting around him, gradually, people sit together with their friends anyway, because we get people to come to the front, so they're kind of sitting together in their clusters. And they vote in clusters, which is really interesting, because you believe what your friend believes. So we've been collecting all of this feedback as well, and we're working with academia. We're now hoping to start a collaboration with a university in Belgium and in Germany as well, so that we can get actual academics to follow this and actually measure the long-term impact and actually do something with this incredible feedback we get on the media consumption of these children, how they interact with it.
Another question I would have is, looking at the conferences, there's a lot of stuff going on about the topic. Fake news, debunking, verification. It's become a profession or an industry. 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was just a very few people would do it. And now there's a lot of experts or self-styled experts or whatever. A lot of journalists have been addressing this. What is how you differentiate yourself in this rather crowded field, if you want?
So first of all, it's true. It's all of a sudden become incredibly sexy, and you have all these media literacy professionals who've been working in the dark for years in their little rooms at the Sorbonne or when, and all of a sudden all the bright lights are shining on them. What I say, the more of these initiatives there are, the better. There can't be enough of them, because the problem is so immediate. It's so much now, and we can't wait. We can't wait just for the public authorities to act. We can't wait, we're in this high-level working group, and so we're advising on sort of long-term goals, but I'm telling you that day by day and post by post, these things are damaging the children's minds. We need to do something immediately, so the more people doing it, the better, as far as I can see. The other thing I would say is that we try not to replicate too much of what's already going on. Our thing really is to create the face-to-face contact between the children and the journalists. And so a lot of the journalists come already with their own media literacy projects. So we just train them on how to talk to the kids for 90 minutes. And afterwards, once we've got the attention of the teachers and the children, we then lead them on to the existing media literacy stuff that is already out there. So basically we're trying to amplify and accelerate as much as we possibly can. And the other thing I'd say about that is that we're lucky to be in this high-level group, and I started this in Belgium just because I live in Belgium, but you actually find that just by virtue of being in Brussels, it immediately accelerates quite quickly, because you start talking to people from whatever the culture ministry from Sweden who are interested. It's like a really great sort of area for synergies. And we have this double approach from the top down with our advocacy, where we're advocating for teacher training curricula to include media literacy, and it's very practical grassroots work.
So it's a two-pronged approach. That means the guys in the middle get pressured from up and down. Is that the idea?
Yeah. There's no pressure. It's all very beautiful. No, I don't know. Well, who would be in the middle? I don't know. Who would be in the middle?
Teachers?
The teachers? Well, that's the thing. We try and make it as easy as possible. That's the other thing, right? There's all sorts of... because the other thing is the uptake from the teachers is so critical. Very often I'll come into a classroom when I'm doing a test session, and I'll find a teacher who says, oh, thank God you're here, just ignore me. I'm going to sit in the back, I've got a stack of papers I've got to mark, just ignore me. And at the end of the session, they'll come and they'll be engaged, right? But really, the fundamental, and this is no disrespect to teachers at all, we all know they're underpaid, massively overworked. So the last thing we need is huge mandates from above, you know, saying, you now must also do this, you know, because they just don't have time. So we try and make it as easy as possible for them with no preparation.
I'll leave it at that, open it to the floor. Any question from your side? And then I have three more questions here. The man at the back.
Yes, Juliane, thank you for this presentation. I'm really intrigued to understand what the children think. So can you tell us what the two biggest questions they ask you are?
Okay, thank you. So they sometimes, and I love it when they do this, ask, have you the journalist, have you ever written fake news? And that's a really great conversation, because when you start unpacking that, it's really great. It's really good for a journalist, because if they see that we are journalists, we're human beings, everybody's now a news consumer, right? And we're all citizen journalists and God knows what, right? But very few people actually know how journalism is actually put together, you know, all the bits that take to make a proper story, right? And if you can then address that and actually admit to some of your failings, it humanizes it, and it just makes actually just the credibility of the professional press that much more robust. And the other question, hang on a second, what was the other question? Oh, they often do actually come and say, oh my God, with all this fake stuff out there, what can we read that's absolutely right? And then we have to say, well, actually, if it's an important enough story, then you probably should read all sorts of different places. Don't just rely on one, you know, because they might have, you know, just like you've just seen in this game that we've just played, you just ran out of time. Well, maybe this journalist ran out of time. So just if it's an important enough thing to you, then read around and read as much as possible. Don't rely on any one single source.
Thank you. I know we talked today a lot about fake news, and Donald Trump made it sexy by vulgarizing this term, fake news, while fake news is just lie, and it has existed since humans are human. And I know that social media make it easier today, just spread any kind of information that lie, manipulation, etc. And what you are trying with the kids is to tell them adults don't necessarily tell the truth all the time. And me, I'm just thinking a wider picture, like how we teach kids to not believe what adults tell them. And does that not start at home with education, with teaching children to keep their critical thinking and to not always believe what they've been told? And does that start at home? And do you involve the parents with what you do? And you have experience with talking also with the parents?
That's a really, really great question. And we find that at age 10 and 11, by the way, the reason why we do kids aged 10 and 11, normally in their first year of secondary school, and aged 14, 15, because we try and bookend those parts where they first start actually reading stuff online, they stop just playing games online, and when they start making up their own minds, 14, 15, about the world, maybe questioning what their teachers or parents are saying. And what we found in Brussels, we did a lot of the tests in Brussels, it's absolutely fascinating, at the European schools. And the European schools have got incredibly sort of high-level, you know, kids from high-ranking bureaucrat officials and diplomats and God knows what, you know, and they've got like high-level dinner table conversations you can imagine, right? And even in those classes, you find that by the time the kids are 14 and 15, you're absolutely right, the class divides on an East and West Europe axis on questions such as religious tolerance or asylum rights and things like that. We have not started working with parents yet. Right now, what we're trying to do is work with the kids and with the teachers. But I can imagine it happening. What was your other question? It was really like, how do you undo what's being done? Well, and I think that's actually why we have to start at age 10 and 11. That they keep asking. And we try and make it fun for them, that it's actually fun to ask questions. You know what I mean? You can find out some really cool stuff if you just actually, you know, question the belief that you might have already, you know, held. And what we also find, which is very interesting, is that nobody fundamentally wants to be duped, you know? Nobody wants to believe that the guy married the snake when he didn't actually marry the snake. But it's exactly as you say. Once you believe something, it's really hard to stop believing it. You don't want to stop believing it because it's admitting to a fault. And that's where we talk a lot about the questions. Just keep questioning, keep looking at things from different angles, and you'll actually have fun and learn a lot.
Thank you very much. I'm Barbara Galani. I work for the European Food Safety Authority. We try and communicate about science and safe food. As you were talking, it's a fantastic program. It's fascinating. And I identified a lot of the similar challenges with media literacy that we've had for quite some time with science literacy. And it's about the reputable sources, it's about identifying good and bad science, the bias, the evidence, and questioning it, and keeping an open mind. So we didn't get it quite right with science literacy and understanding of science. What can we learn from your experience, and how can we combine the media and science literacy to have a bit more of resonance?
Okay, so your question's really also about science literacy, right? So that's a really good question. I was just talking to somebody from the European Health Parliament. Have you ever heard of them? So they're, you know, I was talking to somebody in Brussels. They sound like they do really great stuff. And they are actually currently developing teaching modules to do with science literacy. And what we're hoping, I mean, and this is like, we've finished our test phase last October, and we're now scaling it, right? But what our aim is in the end is to be able to lead teachers to media literacy modules, right? And they can be in whatever subject they should be. So, you know, if you come up with some really great training scheme, you know, if we go into the classroom of somebody who's got a little bit of an interest in science as well, then they can go to that, because you're absolutely right, science literacy, numeral literacy, you know, they should be able to question. This is why, by the way, we're so adamant that this be integrated into teacher training colleges, because what the idea is that it shouldn't matter whether you're an arts teacher or a physics teacher, a maths teacher, biology, ethics, who cares, right? You should be able to talk about media literacy so that children, regardless of what subjects they take, are always going to be taught how to verify their sources. So it's a really, really good question, and I'm really hoping that we'll be able to integrate that and then lead the classrooms, lead the teachers into all of these directions.
Maybe also one comment on this one. The problem is with the teachers, everybody says it's the other guy. I'm the mathematics teacher, no, the physics teacher does it, or the IT guy does it, or the German teacher does it, or the English teacher does it. So everybody is basically, since they're not so savvy on this, wants somebody else to do it. And nobody says it's my topic, because media literacy is not a topic like biology or geography. So in the systems of schools that are based on, you know, 19th century, if you like, notions of how the world is being divided, there is no one curriculum that addresses this. And then it's usually down to individual teachers' enthusiasm or interest, or especially if they have kids that age, they're struggling with it at home, so they realize there's something going on here and I should address it. But the idea would be that teacher training colleges, or that this would become an integral part of all teacher training of any teachers that go into school. And also what we see is the younger generation of teachers who are now at university, they grow up with this, so it's an easier sell to them than to somebody like my age who's been teaching, you know, class for 50 years, and he doesn't want to look like a fool and not know enough. Same goes for journalists. You know, journalists never would admit they don't know anything. They always say, yeah, sure, I know it, or I can find it out by tomorrow. So the teachers, it's more than just single courses. It will need the change of a whole ecosystem of what is important, what are skills, and what do kids need to learn. And it is not divided by this traditional biology, geography, physics, separation that the kids have now. So this is difficult. come to the other question here, the challenge is there. It sounds walk in the park. This is a great idea. Everybody needs it. Any challenges? Did you ever experience like get lost, or we don't want you, or this is not good, or something like that?
Amazingly, not yet. Amazingly, and you have to think like we started our first test sessions in February of 2017. We only became incorporated as a non-profit in July of 2017, so we've not even existed for a year. But the speed at which this is going, it's really quite extraordinary, you know. I mean, I'm invited to come here and talk to you about this. And, you know, we're going to all sorts of places. The challenge, oh my God, the challenges are scaling it, you know, and herding journalists, you know, like we're journalists because we don't like people telling us what to do. So I'm actually right now figuring out with a programmer how to make a scheduling app, you know, and I know that Uber taxis are in many places a very evil word, right? But I would love for a teacher to be able to say, you know, here I'm in Perugia and my kids are 11 and 12 and I have time on Wednesday afternoons, and then you go bloop, and then there's like 5 journalists in the vicinity who've been trained, and one of them says, I can go, you know? So that's actually a challenge. Right now we're doing it with an awful lot of charts on walls, and I'm always thinking, oh God, I hope it doesn't go wrong. And the uptake from the teachers. So far we've had a really, really great experience, and we're riding this wave. Right now, everybody knows about it, and I get emails from, like, I don't know, a teacher. I got an email from a teacher in the Canary Islands going, I know that you probably won't come to the Canary Islands, but can you just tell me what material I can do? So, you know, right now the uptake is great. I can foresee that when this is, you know, just like with any fad, right? When the fake news fad is over and people are sick to death of hearing about it, maybe the teachers won't be quite as interested. And I just really hope then that the idea of a journalist coming in and giving a session and a fresh face coming in and relieving the teacher of some work for 1.5 hours, that will actually carry us through that fatigue.
And do you, what is the incentive for the journalists, except for wanting to talk about their profession, which they like to do, obviously, but there's money involved as well.
Yes, so we don't like working on a volunteer basis because we do actually expect people to deliver something, right? They have to stick to the script because it's important that they not deliver the wrong message. They have to be on time, you know. Journalists being on time, that's also quite difficult, you know, and they also have to deliver the feedback sessions because we work a lot with feedback with kids, like literally old-fashioned pen on paper to actually reinforce the learning. And they get paid 150 euros per diem for every classroom session. Basically, we're like, that's for the effort it takes to spend half a day going to a school, giving the session, coming back, putting the feedback forms into the post, and sending it off to us. And once the feedback forms arrive with us, they get their pay. Oh, and why else would they like it? I don't know. I mean, do you guys like the idea of it? How many of you are journalists in this room? Right. And how many of you journalists would actually feel like it would be a nice idea to go into a classroom? Yeah, so most of you, right? Yeah.
I mean, also we have experience now in Germany and in Belgium, and we don't know what it will be like in Hungary or in Poland or in Slovakia, where access to schools might be more regulated. This is a very open situation, and normally when teachers say you can come into my class, you don't need to fill 27 forms before you can go into class. I'm not sure what the situation will be like in Hungary. They might not admit you to class. Any ideas on that? You have a big stick somewhere.
So we were actually talking, you know about this, right? We were talking loosely with an organization about taking this to Poland, and there's been interest from Ukraine and from Belarus, I don't know. I think we'd actually probably have to work really hard to adapt the script to make sure that, because just like when you were asking what about the kids that get this stuff from home, and I can tell you that in these classrooms in Brussels, the audience breaks down on East and Western Europe. I don't know, but it's something that we want to do. We've not done it yet. But I imagine that I kind of imagine that this open approach that we take and the fact that they come up with the answers themselves and this innate thing that kids are curious and that people don't want to be duped, that's hopefully a formula that'll, I mean, finding the good journalists, I'm sure there's good journalists out there. It's just a matter of finding them, sending them out.
Just a brief comment. Congratulations to that to that entire concept and to what you're doing. I was thinking, I mean, it's really a matter of scaling it right now and getting it into different countries and scaling it in Germany and so on. And so I was wondering if you're speaking to Ashoka, because they would be certainly interested in hearing about that, and they have a network of thousands of, I mean, they support social entrepreneurs, and that's actually what you're doing there. And I think they would really love that. And you apply there as a fellow, as an Ashoka fellow, and you get all the support from, I don't know, all sorts of, PricewaterhouseCoopers helps with a business plan, Hill & Knowlton help with a PR, and et cetera, et cetera. So, and they have just a very broad network, and probably that is an idea for you to approach them, ashoka.org.
Thank you. I'll see you afterwards and take a note of all of that. Yeah, that's a great idea. Thanks. Exactly. Like wherever we can, we try to piggyback onto infrastructures that already exist, you know. So if there are, whatever, like I know in the UK, we're not currently active in the UK, but in the UK there's a fabulous organization called Speakers Trust who send people into schools to give training on debating skills and things. And if we were to go in there, we would hope, you know, and obviously there's like not at all agreed with anyone, but the idea is, God, if there's someone who already does access all these schools, let's just piggyback on their backs and go, exactly, because the scaling is so important.
So I wanted to follow up with your discussion about how would it go in Ukraine or Hungary. Because in Lithuania we are doing this. My colleague Karolis, we are journalists, and we have our agency, our own agency, and actually other organizations invite us to go to schools, and we started to prepare methodology programs for teachers. So we work with students and with teachers, and sometimes it's hard to get in schools. They don't want to let us in because of the schedule of they have to find the time or whatever, and some of the teachers are also very skeptical and they don't want to do it. But after that, it's everything just like you said. They want us to come back, they talk to their colleagues, and their colleagues invite us. So the organizations that we work with, they want to continue, they look for funding and to expand. So I also wanted to talk maybe with you after that, so that we maybe could connect everything instead of just working separately, and bring something from your experience to our place as well.
And how many schools are you in contact with at the moment?
So last year, our colleagues from the agency did 10 schools, and we went to they went to smaller towns, like to some schools with ethnical minorities, and so it was all over the country, going out from the big cities to smaller towns and all over the country. So this year we want to do again some other schools in the suburb, in the like areas that not many journalists would go, in opposed to capital city, for example, or other big towns. So we're going to continue, and we're going to work with teachers who come to Vilnius, for example, to capital city for the workshop. They learn how to use social media to understand how it works, and they are also very engaged after they know how it works, and then they have ability to work with students and talk about that.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you afterwards about that. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Flager. I'm from the US and I'm studying abroad. I was wondering, how do you fund lie detectors? I know you said you pay them, journalists, €150 per session. Are you a nonprofit, or how do you go about that?
Okay, so we actually get all of our money from the US, from something called it was on the first slide, the WIS Foundation. The WIS Foundation is a really bizarre place to get the money from. It is a land conservation foundation. They normally buy vast tracts of land in the US and I think in Romania and possibly in Argentina or something. You know, they buy land and then donate it to the government and say, here you go, here's a national park. And bizarrely, we have found that there's an overlap of interest between conservation and environmental groups and this field, probably because, I don't know this for a fact, but probably because people working on climate change and in the environment have been worrying about climate change deniers for a lot longer than we've been talking about fake news. So we get it from that. Yes, we're a non-profit. It actually took ages to do. It took a really long time. And when I started this, I kind of just had to live on my savings for a really long time, because there's a lot of legislation to do with, anti-terror rules and money laundering directives and everything. So if you're getting money from a US charity, from a US 501c3, which is what the WIS Foundation is, you actually have to put it through a vetting process. And the ones who vet it for us are a very well-known Belgian institution called the King Baudouin Foundation. And they basically did all the checks. So we have to report not only to our funders, but also to the King Baudouin Foundation to make sure it's all going according to plan. And we gave them a 3-year plan, and they decided yes, and so that's it. We're fine for 3 years. We're really lucky not to have to be looking around for money for a while.
Hi. Thank you for coming here. I wondered, what are your general thoughts on the school system? Do you think it works, that it brings out critical thinkers? Because the whole system has to work in order that your program can also, work.
Yeah. It really varies from teacher to teacher. So we've gone into schools, into different ones, teachers refer us within a school. There'll be one teacher who'll go, oh, I loved it, and then they'll tell everyone, over coffee, and then we'll get more requests. And you can really see that within one school system, it really varies enormously from teacher to teacher, and also from classroom to classroom. Some classrooms are just, you're working with human beings, you can't gauge it. And, sometimes it does actually happen. I say the process is electrifying, and it really is most of the time. And you also sometimes walk into a classroom of 14 and 15-year-olds who are so desperately shy that they won't say a word, and it's incredibly uncomfortable. And then, afterwards from the feedback, that actually sometimes the quiet classrooms are actually equally as engaged, and they're really getting it. They just don't want to say anything because they're embarrassed or their voices are breaking or God knows what's happening to them. And so that's why we've also adapted the script, because we're training the journalists, and we the journalists are our gold, that's our reserve, these amazing professionals who can talk, because 1/3 of the script, by the way, is up to improvisation. 2/3 is scripted, and 1/3 of the visit is up to them to talk. And so we really need the journalists to come in with their fresh blood and their experience of some local story that they covered and everything. And we need for them to have a nice time. And so therefore, and sometimes journalists can actually be quite scared of going to talk to kids. This is a totally new thing. We're so happy doing our fact-checking behind our screen and saying that's wrong and we're right and everything. But to actually go into a classroom can be quite tight. So we've rewritten the script so that the journalists can pivot between a quiet classroom and a lively classroom, so that we actually address the difference. But all in all, the educational system, even in Finland, and I've not been to Finland, but I've been told, and this is only anecdotal, okay? I can't say anything about the whole country or anything. Finland is an amazing example of a country where media literacy has become a mandatory part of the school curriculum, and still the media literacy practitioners worry about uptake from the teachers. It's really about activating, and I've had teachers tell me that a lot of it is down to the leadership of the head teacher, and that really will guide a school. And then again, we've got human beings, and it varies from day to day.
As a fundraiser and as a communicator, and first thing I would like to highlight an opportunity that can be also interesting for other people in the room. I'm involved in a European initiative that is called Next Generation Internet, and we are setting up some awards. So there are awards concerning research, awards concerning startups, and awards concerning culture of the next generation internet, where I could see initiatives like yours fit. So next generation internet is about making it a bit more respectful of users and spreading more awareness about it can work, and having different business models that are not just based on data extraction. So if you want, we can talk later, but there is this opportunity going on in Europe.
Oh,
and then I had a question. Brussels is a very specific place, and you were mentioning kind of upper class kind of schools. So I was wondering if you work also with more complicated, let's say, situations, and if you have kind of find some different patterns, and I mean, how do you make what you do relevant in different contexts? Thank you.
That's a really good point, yes. So this is the reason why we've gone into, we have such wide exposure to privileged classes is because my working language is English, right? And Belgium, as you know, is bilingual, French and Dutch. And so I started it in English. I had started the script together with other people and psychologists and teachers and things, but I went into the English-speaking schools, which are by default in Brussels, you know, the higher ones. I can't wait, and what we're doing right now, so then we've translated it into German, and in Germany we've been going into German schools. Very recently we actually started going into Saxony, and we really want to work in that area where, you know, I don't know, like Germany, well, the political map of Germany is quite interesting, and Saxony is a very particular case where there's been quite a lot of extremism, and so we really, you know, we're starting to go there, and I can't wait to do more of it. And in Brussels, I can't wait to translate this into French. We're just doing that right now, literally right now. I've got a translator working on the script so that we can, and we're talking to the French-speaking state broadcaster in Belgium. I want to start going into Molenbeek, which, you know, is a really problematic area in Brussels and everywhere. So it should work. It's designed to work because it's designed to bring stuff out from the kids. You do sometimes see that in Berlin, we've seen that sometimes the kids are more unruly and everything, but actually they're getting to play games, and the younger ones are getting to move around, you know, and they just like it. They're like solving puzzles and things. So far it's worked. You know, in the various, I can't say that we've been in really, really, really problematic areas. We have been to one problematic area, but it was a good school in that problematic area, right? We've not been to a nightmare school yet. I'll let you know.
I have two more, and then we have to wrap it up. Huh?
Okay, hello. So yeah, I'm Karolis Vyšnauskas from Nanook Multimedia in Lithuania, and I was wondering, do you meet children who are aware that they are consuming biased media, but they do it by their own choice? For example, maybe there are, people who consume, let's say, Breitbart news. They don't expect them to be objective. They like that they are like this. They think that this is some kind of part of counterculture, and maybe children being in their teenage years, they think that, oh, I won't read these like objective news, I'll go here, and I know that my teachers won't like it, and then I will be counterculture, or I will be rebel, because those publications want to sell them like that. That's how they get you, I think. I wonder, do you face that? Or maybe when the kids are like 10 and 11 years old, they are not really caring about ideology, and maybe that's the age when you actually can get them on the right path, so they won't be radicalized in the future. Thank you.
Yes, we do. Were you there? Were you in the, you might have been there. Oh, never mind. There was very recently there was a classroom visit where one of the boys was actually reading Russia Today a lot, and what else? I can't. And maybe it was Sputnik or something, and he was circulating it on Facebook. And Snapchat. No, I don't remember the platforms he was using, but he was circulating it among his fellow students with the express purpose of getting everybody really angry, right? And we do talk. So yes, absolutely, that happens, and we talk about that. So we talk. We give them like. I've not actually talked about this because it's really obvious. We give them like a little toolkit. Like we give them the U.S. Association of Librarians has come up with a really nice visual thing that they've allowed us to use. And one of those things, like check the headline, check the date, check the URL, all the things that we know, right? But also check your own bias, and we talk quite a lot. This is one of the things we ask the journalists to really remember to talk about, that the stories are out there because we want them to be out there, because we want the children to understand that it is the demand that feeds it, If there's clickbait, it's there because people are clicking on it, and that the kids can understand it. You need to demystify it. It's not going away. And if the kids can actually learn, I actually think, I don't know what you all think, right? But this stuff is not going away because it's a money-making machine, right? And it's also very powerful in terms of, moving people's perceptions, and people are going to carry on wanting to do that, right? But if you can kind of demystify it and take out the thorn so that kids, yeah, sure, let them read Breitbart for a laugh, right? You will read, I don't know, some other newspaper that is full of rubbish, but, it might be entertaining. If they see it as entertainment, great. What's wrong with that, right? As long as they can tell the difference between a fact and an opinion and a joke and a hoax, That's what we think.
One last question, then we have to wrap it up.
Thank you. This is just a small detail, but coming back to this difficult social background school. So I'm in a position, I'm a journalist, and my partner is a teacher at such a school. And I'm absolutely sure that this program would work in this class because, as you said, those children as well, they love playing games and discussing. But to be honest, I would be very afraid to go and face such a class on my own if I had to go there as a journalist. So maybe just as a thought, have you thought about sending journalists to go there into such schools with difficult social backgrounds together? Well, 2 journalists. Is this a thought? Because, yeah, I would just be afraid.
That's a good question. So, first of all, we only ever go into the classrooms with a teacher present. And part of the training is something incredibly boring, but it makes a gigantic difference. We always make sure that the journalist talks to the teacher by phone before a session, right? So that there's a verbal, a conversation that happens, and the journalist can ask, how many kids are there? What kind of group is it? Do they talk a lot? And you get interesting answers, right? You get, oh, well, there's somebody who's quite disruptive, but don't worry, then you get the buy-in from the teacher. He'll say, don't worry, I'll help you. It's a difficult class, but I'm going to help you. And then that's it. We never go in alone. But it's a good question. Maybe at one point we'll have to go in and, I hope not. Kids they're not all bad.
I'm sorry, I think we have to wrap it up here, just here. Thank you, Juliane. Thank you very much for the interest.
Thank you, everyone.
This is not going away, so there'll be more of that. And
Also ich habe
das ist am Start.